Welcome to Best Practices for Winning More Clients, brought to you by Martindale-Hubbell Legal Marketing Network in conjunction with the American Bar Association and Captora. With more than 400,000 members, the American Bar Association is one of the largest voluntary professional membership organizations in the world. The ABA is dedicated to providing members with resources that help them become better legal professionals and to advocating for the rule of law both domestically and abroad. The Martindale-Hubbell Legal Marketing Network helps attorneys grow their practices through real-time lead generation, online legal profiles, and custom website services. And as the largest legal marketing network, they connect more consumers with attorneys than anyone else. I'm Mark Nichols with the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division, and I'll be serving as your moderator today. Joining me on the program is Chelsea Langen, VP of Sales for Martindale-Hubbell, Chris O'Brien, CEO of Captora, Mark Shepard, President of Martindale Engage, and Reza Torkzadeh, owner and attorney at the Torkzadeh Law Firm. Before we get started, just a few reminders. First, please submit any questions you have through the webinar platform. Second, we will be holding a Q&A session during the last 10 to 15 minutes of the program, and any questions that go unanswered through that 10 to 15 minutes will be responded to after the event. There will be a webinar replay provided to all attendees and registrants after the event. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Chelsea, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody. I'm Chelsea Langen, and I'm the Vice President of Sales and Operations for Martindale-Hubbell. Today, we'd like to share with you some insights and best practices to win more clients. We've got some great stats and real-life examples that are going to detail how to generate leads or inquiries from prospective clients, work them through the intake process, and then convert them into paying clients. All right, so let's start with an overview of what the legal marketing universe looks like today and what it means for you. So by now, you know that having a presence online is no longer an option, it's a requirement. But did you know that 76% of consumers search for an attorney online? That's a huge number, so it's pretty spectacular to see that. So how do you stand out from the other 500,000 small law firms who are using things like SEM, SEO, lead generation, and other marketing channels to connect and earn prospective clients' business? And really, which one performs the best? So there's many options out there to help you market your services, and we wanted to know which ones perform the best. So we polled over 300 attorneys who use various marketing tactics like SEO and lead generation to see which one's working best for them. And the results showed that 49% of respondents are having the most success with lead generation programs. And then it's followed by a big bucket kind of called other, and that includes things like client referrals. So you would expect that those are going to convert well. And then back to more traditional marketing programs like SEO at 10%. And just as a reminder for those of you who aren't sure what SEO means, it stands for search engine optimization. And it's basically optimizing your website design and content so that it ranks better within the search engine results. It's also going to be interesting to see in the coming years if social media makes any gains, as law firms are starting to move more of their marketing spend to this channel. All right, so let's go ahead and pause here for a minute and do a quick poll on a very important metric that's going to help you determine how well your marketing channels are performing. So the question is, how many clients do you retain from your marketing efforts each month? So please take a minute to answer just one of the, respond to just one of the answers. So is it less than 5%, 5 to 10%, 11 to 15, or are you a rock star and you've got greater than 15%? And it's okay if you're not sure, just go ahead and select unsure. We're just going to wait a few more minutes. Oh, looks like we got the results in here. All right, so kind of as I expected, there's a pretty large number that are unsure, and that's okay. We're going to kind of help you work through that a little bit today, as well as we've got some other great webinars and content up on our website that can help you with that. And then a large percent are less than 5%. So interesting results here. Okay, let's go ahead and continue with some stats themes here. I'm going to give you some additional poll results that we've accumulated over our years here. So we polled about 1,500 Martindale-Hubbell lead generation customers and asked them, you know, how long and how many leads does it take before you retain their first client? And on average, it's about the 13th lead and around 28 days. Now, it's important to note that, like any marketing channel, the results are really going to vary by practice area and by the attorney. And by that, I mean how well the attorney has their intake process dialed in. Intake is key for every law firm. I can't stress that enough. And I've found that a solid intake process is really the key factor in determining success with our customers. And Reza and Chris are going to be providing some great real-life examples on this shortly. Okay, so let me just step back here for a minute and review the life cycle of a prospective client, just to kind of help you visualize what the process looks like. Most people think that generating an inquiry or a lead is the hardest part, but really the work starts after that with the intake process. And your intake process, as I mentioned earlier, can really kind of make or break your success. So intake includes how and when you begin your initial contact, and hint, the answer is immediately. And if that contact is unsuccessful, how and at what frequency do you follow up with additional phone calls and texts and emails until contact is made? What questions are you going to ask during your intake call and more? I'm going to leave the details of those topics to my esteemed fellow speakers who will be touching on each of them here shortly. Okay, I'm going to end my segment with some additional stats we gathered from our customer base related to their intake process. And I have to tell you, we've been doing this survey for a few years now, and I'm very pleased to see that attorneys are getting more sophisticated and better at this process. So 39% follow up within 15 minutes. And I know this can be difficult for some solo and small law firms, but it's imperative to respond as quickly as possible. The next metric here shows that while 77% contact a lead 2 or more times, only 2% are actually contacting their prospective client 7 or more times. Now, I can tell you, having worked here for 8 years, that my best performing customers reach out at minimum 7 times through phone calls and emails and text messaging. All right. And I'm going to leave you with one final stat. 20% of consumers hire a Martindale-Hubbell attorney that we connected them with within the first week of submitting their lead. We also know that sometimes it takes up to a month or more, and it really does vary by practice area. Some of them are a little bit more time sensitive, like the UI. So don't give up until you get an answer. And if you don't after a month, go ahead and put them in some sort of email nurturing campaign so you can keep your law firm out in front of them, so when they're ready, they're going to know who you are. All right. So thanks for your time, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Reza, who's got some great real-life examples to share with you.
Thanks, Chelsea, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. And I do want to thank Martindale-Hubbell and the ABA Young Lawyers Division in Captora for asking me to share my experience and story with you all. And certainly there's some fantastic information and some wonderful panelists here that have great real-life tips. So whether you're a solo or you're a small firm looking to grow or just looking for just one extra edge and tip, I think you're going to find a lot of them here today. So this is a fantastic program, and I'm learning a lot, and I have already just listening to Chelsea and looking through the slides. So I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I am and benefit through your practices. And as we all know, as attorneys running our own firms, we're also wearing many different hats. That includes marketing. And I was once told that the most important part of any case is getting it. And I think it's true for every practice area that it is extremely competitive. And one of the key factors is, how do you set yourself apart? What are the most effective things that you're doing? And so one of the most important elements to our growth has been what we call lead nurturing. And among that is a process that Chelly talked about, and having an intake process that is consistent, but is also very aggressive, because your competitors will be immediately contacting their leads. And so once you do get a potential lead, whether it's by an email form or a chat or a text, you want to make sure that you have a process in place that you are immediately contacting them. There may be times where you're on the phone within a minute or even less than that, which is what we strive to do at my firm. But you want to make sure that your follow-up process is rock solid. You want to make sure that you do have a system where text messages are being sent, emails are being sent. I think the most common forms of communication for most of us these days are through text and through email. And so make it simple and make it easy. Make it something that's very familiar for your prospect to communicate back with you. And with lead nurturing, what I like to say is you want to close the back door. And what I really mean by that is if you're spending money to acquire the cases and to generate the marketing, you want to make sure that you're getting people into your front door, but you're not letting them walk out the back. And you prevent that from happening by communicating them and touching them in ways that you can make sure that you're engaging. So when you follow up, like Chelsea said, I think you want to do at minimum 7 follow-up calls. You want to make sure that you are texting and you have an email funnel. And I think Captora's got a wonderful presentation later in the presentation. But you want to make sure that you're utilizing all of these things. Now, most of them can be automated. So you want to look at how you can automate some of the processes that you put in place. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I think at the outset, you want to identify who your ideal clients are. Who are the ones that you're looking to retain as clients, and who you would accept. Along that, you need to obviously have some qualifications, but I agree with the previous slides that you don't really want to make it very difficult for the clients to go through a questionnaire. And the other thing I would stress is that you don't need to also be afraid of spam or be afraid of potential clients that you might not necessarily be able to help. So the approach should be, I think it's easier to cast a wider net and then send those leads back into the sea, so to speak, than really restricting yourself and making it difficult for your prospective clients to get in touch with you. So along the automation that I was speaking about earlier, there are a lot of great programs out there that you can look to. You can set up funnels, and you can set up a schedule of when the emails go out to your prospective clients. So if they do fill out a contact form or you're able to capture their names and email addresses, you can stick them into your email automation system. And if you look below, we have a sample email schedule where you're providing the prospective clients with some value propositions. You know, what makes you different than all of your competitors? Even though we all may be saying the same thing, I think it comes down to who's saying it more clear, more louder, more concise. But again, I think the follow-up and providing information that the prospective clients find useful is what will set you apart from your competitors. And you're building trust, and you're building a sense of urgency. And of course, you're building a line of communication that continues for multiple days. So we send about 15 emails throughout the course of 2 weeks after a prospective client contacts us. If we can go to the next slide, please. We talked about text messaging and how important that's been. It's really changed the way we engage, not just with prospective clients, but also ongoing with our existing clients. I think it's absolutely necessary now to use text messaging in your marketing campaigns. I think chat is another one that has really changed our practice. We'll talk about that later. Create a blog. I think we all hear that, but just really quickly, you want to write for the clients and not necessarily writing for a different audience. So instead of being I, you want your writing to be about you and the person that's reading it. writing for legal journals, I think those are all fantastic. If you are building a referral network, of reaching out to potential attorneys who are outside your practice area or maybe within your practice area that are not handling particular cases, those are fantastic. I think social media, again, these are must. You have to be active. You have to have some sort of presence at a minimum. Anything to keep you going, to again cast your net as wide as possible. And I think that you want to also look to your existing clients and previous clients as a source of referrals. You want to make sure that what we do is we send out birthday cards and holiday cards and newsletters. You can even send out a personal email. But I think all of this really goes back to engaging your audience, engaging your prospective clients and your colleagues. And I think that's the end of my slides, but I look forward to any questions you all might have.
Thank you. So my name is Mark Shepard. I'm the president of Engage. We run the live chat service 24/7 on over 7,000 legal websites across the country and internationally as well. But today I'm just going to talk about website conversion in general. So the very top of the funnel. And when I say conversion, I mean basically the number of website visitors who are coming to your site. What percentage of those are we actually deriving contact information from? So I talk about this with a lot of different firms, and the number is usually pretty shocking. The average conversion rate in terms of getting contact information from a visitor that checks out your site is 3%. So we're spending all this time and money and energy trying to drive all these people to the site, and then 97% of these visitors never contact us. So I'm going to share a few things that can hopefully help out and maximize those existing visitors that we do have. A couple stats on here. The average consumer checks out 4.5 legal websites before they do choose to contact one firm. And then on top of that, the average consumer contacts 3 attorneys before they're actually hiring one. So we're going to talk a bit about how to help with that. I've heard all different kinds of opinions on websites and what makes one good and not good. This is the only thing I've seen that's actually objective and can give you some different strategies. So the idea is that there's these 4 different buying behaviors. This applies to somebody looking for an attorney. This applies to somebody looking for, clothes or a car seat, anything. But the idea is that you have a visitor who's either emotional or logical, and you've got a visitor who's either quick or slow in their buying process. So I'm going to go over each one of these, how it applies to law firms, and how we can tailor our websites to these types of visitors. So the first one is a competitive buyer. This is going to be somebody who's logical in their decision-making process, and they're quick. So basically what that means is they simply want the best attorney. So when I'm consulting with any firm, I'll let them know basically anything that you can have on your website that separates you from the other attorneys and shows that, hey, basically you're the best is what you want to display on your site. So there's no time to be bashful. Even if it's not a huge deal to you, I'd say display it on your website, because this is a lot of times this visitor's first time seeing your site or your firm, and you have to make an immediate impression on this type of buyer. So like with personal injury lawyer, any types of verdicts need to be prominently displayed. Any awards that you've won. The badges, again, even if they're not super important to you, it can make an impression on this type of buyer. Sometimes you'll have a media appearance, or if you're on the local news talking about a story, that can give you instant credibility, and I always suggest absolutely sharing those. The last thing that you need to include on your site is any type of ratings. So this includes ratings by your peers, like the Martindale AV rating, and the others, but also I'd say reviews. So reviews from your clients. I think 60% of clients said that reviews were the #1 reason they chose to hire a law firm. So that's important to a competitive buyer. The next one is a spontaneous buyer. So these guys are in an emotional state, and they're going to make a very quick decision about hiring an attorney. So if you've got a contact form, you want that to be prominently displayed on your website. You want it to be short and sweet. So I've seen some that have, it's basically a questionnaire. We want to avoid that at all costs. For phone number, we want to make that extremely prominent. On the website, large. So that's one thing that I see. I look at a lot of legal websites, and sometimes I have to click on the Contact Us page to actually call the firm. That's killing you. The other thing is we want to make it clickable. So with Engage, over half of our visitors now are on mobile. If they want to call your firm, you need to make that phone number a clickable dial so that it's very easy for you to be contacted. And then the other thing with phone numbers, so after hours is huge. 40% of visitors contact a firm after 5 p.m. and before 8 a.m. So if you don't have anybody on your team that can take those calls, I highly recommend one of these answering services that can immediately get that person on the phone and at least set up an appointment with your practice. The last thing is what I do, which is live chat. So basically we put the chat service on the firm's existing site, and then we have the secretaries that monitor those chats 24/7. So what we've seen with the chat, on average, we can get one additional chat lead for every contact form that your firm was previously getting, basically doubling the contacts. It's just a strategy to engage some of these visitors in a conversation, get them talking and chatting about their situation before they might have jumped onto the next site and talked to the next firm. In the chat itself, we can do a live transfer, which is basically transferring that visitor from the chat directly to a phone call with your office, which can be highly effective. But here's what it looks like on a basic site. You have the button on the side. You have a button in the corner. Also, after they're browsing for a little while, you guys have probably seen it, but the chat invitation will appear and basically ask if we can help. Once they're involved in a chat conversation, I think it's the next slide, but we're obviously never going to offer any kind of specific legal advice. Really what we're doing is just asking some basic questions, learning a little bit about their situation, getting the basic facts, and then ultimately positioning the firm as the experts, like the next step of who they need to talk to on the phone. So it's totally a conversion technique. This is something fairly new regarding the texting. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but Google recently rolled out the ability to text directly from Google Ads or PPC, pay-per-click. So you'll see on this left side, this first ad has the website and the phone number only. The one below has the website, the phone number, and the texting option. So your firm can handle this text yourselves. I have a lot of clients where we handle the text for them. It goes straight to our same Engage operators. But it's just a way of quickly converting that visitor. So instead of going from the ad to your website and then hopefully getting a contact, you're now going straight from the ad directly to a chat or a text and then immediately converting that visitor. So we've seen about a 40% increase versus before they had this feature. Jumping back to the different buying behaviors, so this next one is methodical. So they're very logical and slow in their buying behavior. This is the type of visitor that's going to read every piece of content on your website. If you have any videos of yourself talking, they're going to watch every one of them. One strategy to convert these types of visitors are the books or informational packets that you can send them in exchange for their contact information. And then like we talked about earlier, the blog is very important for these guys. You're delivering content that directly applies to their specific situation and might be how they found you in the first place. Finally, this last one, this is the one that gets left out a lot of times, but it's very important, is just a humanistic type of buyer. This is a buyer that's both emotional and slow. So what we're trying to convey with this is to show this person who's never talked to you before that you're a good person that wants to help. So here's a couple screenshots from one of my clients. He's been involved in his community for a long time. He just never really touted that. I say, don't be bashful. Go ahead and show what you're working on. So he gives away helmets and bicycles. He does these mock trials. I've seen other firms do scholarships. They do the free cab vouchers, for example, on like holidays. They do texting, strategies to avoid like texting and driving. So anything that you're involved with in the community, I'd say absolutely display that on your site and apply to this, appeal to this type of buyer. So videos really come across for these types of people. Testimonials are also huge. We talked about the community involvement. Firm bios are the second most visited web page on a site, aside from the home page. So I'd put a lot of attention to that. They want to see your face, and they want to see who they'll be hiring, and they want to know a little bit about you. So I'd pay a lot of attention to your firm bio and put effort into that. That's all I've got on a quick rundown on website conversion. I think Chris with Captora is now going to talk a little bit about intake.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So I'm Chris O'Brien. I'm with Captora. And I founded the company about 5 years ago, and it's a case intake and lead management system designed specifically for legal practices. But about 4 months ago, myself and my business partners also created a call center by the name of Intake Conversion Experts. And I tell you this because it's very important specifically to our discussion here today on intake, in that the standpoint of my approach to this is very much from a practitioner standpoint. I've really touched all aspects of intake, from the technology side, the phone system side, the best practices side. Even today, I spend about 2 hours per week actually on the phone doing intakes myself. So I understand the challenges associated with the process and the challenges associated with intake. But let me tell you, to echo everyone else's thoughts on this call, I think that intake is the most important aspect of your business. You could be the greatest lawyer in the world, but if you don't have a case, it's worthless towards being able to assist and help people. So intake is critically important to your practice, and if you have a hole in your intake department, that's an enormous problem. So let's talk today, try to give you a few nuggets to take back to your practice to help you better your intake immediately. So first, from the standpoint of what is intake, I define intake as the communications and activities associated with the first interaction with the client through retaining the client. And this can consist of a number of phone calls, client meetings, emails, text messages, drip campaigns, nurturing campaigns. All that makes up kind of the intake process. But something to give you guys to take back with today is the most critical aspect of the intake process is that first impression, that initial 7 seconds that you have speaking with your potential clients. 68% of people will decide in the first 7 seconds if they will do business with you or if they will not. So I'm not telling you that you're going to be able to get people signed up in the first 7 seconds, but I'll certainly tell you that you can lose people in the first 7 seconds. So what do you have to do to make sure that you engage these potential clients in that first 7 seconds? To me, that's simple. It's just caring, showing interest, being engaged in the conversation with that potential client. It's kind of like if you're dating and you go up and approach somebody, it's important that you pay attention, care, and are engaged in the conversation. From an intake standpoint, it's no different. If your initial interaction at your practice with your potential clients is a Debbie Downer that's on the telephone, you are hurting your business. And you need to immediately remove that person from the phone, get somebody else in there that can engage the clients and kind of make them happy and show that your firm cares about their case. Another way that we see firms losing clients is that they are taking their clients through a deep investigation process prior to retaining the client. I recommend that all of you kind of take a step back, identify the questions that you feel are most important to qualify that client, see if it's somebody that you want to sign and work with, and if so, qualify them, sign them, and investigate. Too many attorneys today are going through the investigation process prior to signing, and that's just taking the client through undue stress and undue time that leaves it open for other competitors of yours to potentially sign that client. You want to quickly qualify, retain that client, and then investigate. Now, there's other instances if you have the opportunity where you're a local firm and you could bring somebody into your office and sit down and kind of have a more detailed discussion and talk about the process while they're sitting in front of you. Certainly understand that, and that is very capable for you guys to be able to do that. That's wonderful. If you're doing a lot of work over the telephone and via e-sign, you want to very quickly qualify those clients, get an e-sign in their hands immediately, and try to close them over the telephone. The gold standard associated with intake is what I call a one-call close. So as soon as the person calls your office, you're able to engage them, qualify them, send a retainer agreement to them, and have them signed up before you get off the telephone. That's the gold standard. After that, the next option would be, if you can't close them over the telephone via e-sign, either invite them into your office or dispatch yourself or somebody else to meet with them at their location. And then finally, the third option would be, of course, to send out a mail-out pack. But those are kind of the three processes associated with trying to get a client signed up. The other aspect kind of within intake is the transition from your intake department over to your legal team. And it's important that you don't have your clients repeat everything that they've gone through with your intake department back to the legal team. I see that too often where you'll run them through the same questionnaire on intake, and then the paralegal will get that file and they'll run through the same questionnaire with the legal team. You should make this transition a smooth process to be able to transition that client from intake into your legal staff. Next slide. Sorry, next slide, yeah. So how do you manage intakes? The first recommendation that I would have for you is absolutely do not manage your intakes inside of your Outlook or your email inbox. This is where intakes or leads go to die. So often the lead providers today will send out their leads via email, which is fine to be able to get them out to everybody via email. Ideally, you have a system that can integrate with their systems so that those leads would go directly from their lead management system to your lead management system. But if you don't, I understand that would go to your Outlook inbox. But immediately once you receive that in your Outlook inbox, you should move that into a case management system, a dedicated lead management intake system, even an Excel spreadsheet. Whatever you do, just get it out of your Outlook inbox. Everybody has best intentions. They get that lead inside of Outlook. They call it immediately. They don't get a hold of the person. They say, I'm going to call this person in an hour. And by an hour later, that's 30, 50 messages deep in your inbox. You forget about it, and they never get called again. So whatever you do, get those out of your Outlook inbox and into some sort of a lead management system, even if it's a whiteboard on the wall in your office that you have preview into those leads immediately. My next recommendation as far as managing intakes is to add one additional field to all of your intakes, and that's the intake status. The intake status is critical for you guys to be able to manage your intakes and know exactly where every one of your leads are, every one of your intakes are, what's your inventory of potential new cases, and you can see that all very easily by just managing these via the intake status. Here's my recommendations from an intake status standpoint. I'll quickly run through what each one of those mean, and I'd highly recommend that you do something very similar to this, or if you need to tweak it for your own practice, certainly understand that, but definitely add an intake status into your world from managing an intake standpoint. So a lead is a new lead that would come to us from NOLO as a lead service that we've purchased, or a new Engage lead that gets sent to us. We as the law firm have not made contact with this lead or with this intake. So it's still in a lead standpoint, and we need to engage or try to make initial contact with this lead. Now, it's very important that, as Reza spoke about earlier, that you have drip campaigns and nurturing campaigns that are set up really in two flavors. One is to engage the lead. So you should have a different drip campaign associated with engaging the lead, which is, we're very interested in speaking with you. We'd like to learn more about your case. Those types of things from an engagement standpoint with the lead. Even as I mentioned earlier, with texting immediately following a phone call. We've seen enormous success within our client base where you'll try to reach the person via an initial phone call. If you don't reach them, immediately a text message goes out saying, this is the O'Brien Law Firm. We are trying to reach you regarding your potential case, and then has your phone number. We see almost a 30% return call rate on those text messages that go out because so many people are screening their calls today. They're not listening to messages right away. But as soon as they get that text message, they'll say, oh, you know what? I did want to talk to that law firm, and they'll click the number and dial you back immediately. So very important from a lead engagement standpoint that you have some sort of a drip campaign, and then I love threading the text messages in there in addition to the emails. Under review is an important status. I hate this status, but it's important. This is where you, as a law firm, need additional information to be able to identify if you want this case or not. Ideally, you can collect all the information that you want to at the very first phone call. Sometimes you can't. You either need a client to provide you with more information. Maybe you need to speak with somebody on your side. So you may put it into under review. Just try to keep the use of under review as minimal as possible and try to move things very quickly out of under review, either to disqualifying that intake or to promoting it to a sign-up package scheduled, sign-up activity. Sign-up package, as I said earlier, this is your kind of last resort to try to sign this client up. So this would be sending out a mail-out or a FedEx to try to engage that client and have them return that packet. Now, this is a different type of drip campaign that would be associated with a sign-up package. This is more selling the value of why they should select your firm specifically. So we've already engaged them, we've already qualified them. Now we're trying to make sure that they choose our law firm versus another law firm. So this goes back to kind of Mark for the different types of buyers and the different messaging that you can use to try to engage these clients and make sure that they sign your retainer agreement and send it back versus potentially another firm's. Everybody should also operate from an intake standpoint very specifically under the understanding that the client that you're talking to or potential client that you're talking to is talking to many other law firms. Do not think that you're the only game in town and this person's just going to immediately do business with you. You need to continue to engage this client and continue to nurture them and make sure that they sign your retainer agreement versus somebody else's. I'll ask you another quick question here actually from a sign-up standpoint. If you have a brand new lead that just came into your office or a sign-up package follow-up that you need to perform, which one should you do? I would tell you that I would absolutely encourage you to make sure that you call that sign-up package and follow up and try to get that client signed and returned. And the reason being is that you want 100% of the sign-up packages that you send out, you want as clients. If you get a new lead, you may only want 20 to 30% of those to be your clients because they won't qualify. So I would argue with you that definitely make sure there's a heavier emphasis placed on sign-up packages than what you might be placing today. Scheduled, of course, is very simple. That's just we have a scheduled appointment with the individual, retained or signed up. We've already retained this client or signed them up. They're a client now. If you want to refer this case out, definitely, as Reza said earlier, cast a wider net. It may not be in your specific focus for cases that you handle, but those are great referral opportunities for you to create a relationship with another firm. And in creating a relationship with the other firm, you may be able to get a referral fee or have them refer the cases that you are focused on back to you. So referral, you could talk for hours about referrals, but certainly don't discredit that and try to create your own referral network. Turn down is a case, of course, that you didn't want. You turn those down. Those are easy. No sign is a difficult status for people sometimes. No sign is a case that you wanted, but the client didn't select you. This is a little bit of a self-reflection at the end of the month, at the end of a quarter, end of the year. Look at your no signs and see why people aren't signing with you. Is it a scenario where they selected another firm and for some reason you're consistently losing to other firms and maybe you need to sell the value and the prowess of your firm? Or are they no longer pursuing cases? Did they go cold on you? But it's very important to be able to look at why you're losing cases so that you can shore up your intake process and increase those conversion rates. Finally, who does intake staff? Right now, over 56% of firms are using non-attorney staff to do intakes. I don't necessarily have an opinion on whether I think attorneys or staff should handle intakes. I will give you my one simple opinion, and that the person or persons who handle intake at your office, it should be their number one responsibility. If you have other responsibilities on their plate, intake will always take a backseat. If you have to get a pleading completed and out the door, are you going to call the lead back, or are you going to get that pleading done? Of course you're going to get the pleading done. So I highly recommend that whomever is at your staff handling intake, that is their absolute primary responsibility. We've also seen a big trend in firms starting to hire salespeople to actually handle intake. So I kind of like that. I do like to have a little bit of legal expertise, but I think the legal expertise that needs to be involved in intake can easily be taught within a week or a couple weeks versus having a law degree to be able to do that. Next slide. On the next slide here, it's what aspects of intake can be outsourced. Certainly you can outsource all of it, or you can outsource none of it, but what's best? And I certainly think what's best is a hybrid. As Mark said earlier, if you don't have an after-hours call service that's able to answer your calls 24 hours a day, you're really doing yourself a disservice. It is important that when somebody tries to reach out to you, you at least have somebody answer the phone. There are some folks that would say, but I'll forward it to my cell phone and I'll be able to handle it. That's great, but clients always call at the most inopportune time. Or you find yourself trying to remember numbers and saying, is this that pain in the butt client that I don't want to talk to right now, or is this a new potential case? And these after-hours services and overflow services, they have the ability to go through a quick questionnaire. You can give them criteria for something that's critically important that they can then live transfer to you if it's important. But it's nice to have these groups that are available to triage these calls for you and just get you involved in the most important aspects. From an outsourcing standpoint, there's a number of very credible third-party call center services out there. Of course, my group, which is New Intake Conversion Experts. There's also Legal Intake Professionals, Alert Communication, Answering Legal. There's a number of these that are available to you that are very legal specific and have the ability to be able to answer the phones very credibly. From a technology option standpoint, there are lots of capabilities to be able to generate the leads. You want to have those electronically pulled into a lead management system if at all possible. There are a number of lead management systems that are available to you. Certainly Captora, where I came from, is fantastic, but there's other groups such as Law Ruler or Lexicata or Lead Docket that are also very credible lead management systems that will be available to you. And then finally, eSign. If you guys aren't using eSign in your practice today, I highly encourage you to be able to utilize eSign. It is really a game changer as it relates to your practice being able to increase conversion rate and offering a convenience tool for your clients to be able to sign up with you. Next slide. Just real quickly, here's reporting. This is important to be able to have reports that you look at so you can track your KPIs, which are important for you to be able to track your trends and make sure that you're improving. With this slide, the real important aspect is the items over to the right where you can look at your inventory and see what percentage of your intakes are in lead and no sign and sign up, turn down, and so forth. And then at the bottom, from an intake rep standpoint, it's important to be able to understand who's performing and who's not. And then there's some marketing tracking there as well. Next slide. So 6 months ago, I did a day-long intake seminar, and I thought prior to doing that intake seminar, it would be nice for me to run through a little scenario with each of the attendees for the intake seminar. So I had 25 different firms in attendance, and all personal injury firms. But I said, you know what, I'm going to submit a web lead to each of these firms and see what type of responses I get. And so the scenario that I played out inside the web submission form, this wasn't a live chat like what Mark provides, but just your standard web submission form, was that it was an accident that took place locally in their market. It happened yesterday. I was rear-ended, so I was not at fault, and I had an MRI scheduled for tomorrow. And I submitted that to 25 different firms. Of those 25 that I submitted it to, only 10 of them ever placed a phone call back to me. So 15 never even placed a phone call to me. Of those 10, only 2 of them placed the phone call within the first 15 minutes. And then both of those groups also placed multiple phone calls to me and multiple emails. So they did a really great job, 2 out of 25. The next group, kind of 3 of those 10 people that called me placed a phone call between 15 minutes and 2 hours of me submitting that web lead. And they placed 1 phone call and never contacted me back. No emails, no text messages. 5 of those 10, they did contact me before the end of the day between the 2 and 6 hour range. And again, they placed 1 phone call, never any additional follow-up. 4 of the 25 sent me an email and asked me to call them back. So I submitted essentially a request to them to call me, and then they told me, no, you call us. So not great. And then 11 of the firms never contacted me whatsoever. Of course, when I presented these findings to everyone, there was all the excuses you could ever imagine, and I certainly understand and appreciate things come up, but it's the nature of the beast. You need to be able to follow up on these leads as soon as you get them. Thank you, Chelsea.
Great. I think Mark's going to go ahead and lead us in a panel discussion. Mark, you want to go ahead and take over?
Absolutely. So here's the first question, actually, Chelsea, directed at you, related to advertising. What have you found to be the most effective way of gaining exposure to potential clients who are searching for representation?
That's a bit of a loaded question because exposure can actually mean different things to different people. But what you're really looking for is action from your exposure, and by that I mean leads or inquiries from potential clients, not just your name showing up somewhere in a list. And this is going to sound a little self-serving, and I did talk about this a little earlier, but lead generation services truly do have the lowest barrier to entry to get started, and they're the fastest and easiest way to connect with potential clients. Essentially, you're using the third-party provider to do all the work to generate those inquiries, and all you have to do is focus on your intake, leaving you more time to have activity around billable hours. Chris and Reza, do you want to add anything else in there? There's a lot more that we can do, but I know we have a lot of Q&A here, so I don't want to monopolize too much time. I'll go ahead and flesh this question out in the post-webinar Q&A as well. Chris and Reza, anything you guys want to add?
No, I think that you stated it perfectly.
Yeah, and this is Reza and Chelsea. I have to agree that I think the lead generation services are probably the most immediate return you'll see in terms of action, getting some sort of traction and response into what you're putting out there. So I agree with what you said.
All right. I have another question here on intake, which goes to Reza. Any suggestions on making the ask or closing the deal? What is the way to get from a relationship to a client?
I think there's a couple of factors. A lot of it has to do with your staff, what they're telling the potential client, building rapport. I think Chris talked about this. You want somebody upbeat, somebody is empathetic and can relate. And truly understands the philosophy of your firm and what makes you different than the next person down the list. So if you can figure those things out during an intake, I think you should have a good shot of getting the client to retain you.
Okay. Now we got a question here for Chris on lead management. It's kind of a two-part question. What's the best software that you can use to manage leads? And secondly, what's the best use of social media in order to generate leads?
Well, I'm a little bit biased on the best software, of course. I think that Captora, the software that we've developed, is the best for that. As far as tracking your social media activities, any lead management software that you have should be able to integrate into your social media marketing so that any of your social media leads would integrate directly into your lead management tool, which would then provide you the analytics for how well your campaign's going and your cost per leads and your retention rate associated with that. So that functionality should be found in your lead management tool.
Okay. Question for Mark on kind of time management. I would categorize it as. So Mark, how can a young solo attorney handle unscheduled inquiries from potential clients who want to speak with someone right away?
I think we talked about that a little earlier, but if you don't have the time or you can't make it a priority, then hire one of these third-party services to help you out. And what'll end up happening is it might actually save you money as opposed to hiring a completely new person for your firm. But yeah, immediately getting that person in contact with really anyone, a warm body, is going to be better than having them have no contact, because what they're immediately going to do is move on to the next firm, and you're left in the dust. So I'd highly recommend a third-party service in that situation.
Okay, one that's on conversion that I'll open up to the group, because I think everybody probably has their own perspective on this one, is what are the best types of screening questions to use when looking for a potential new client? Are they open or closed-ended? Are there questions to avoid? Are there key ones that you should always ask? So I'll start with Reza, but I'll open it up to the group.
Well, I think, again, I think Chris had the idea that you don't want to interrogate your prospective clients. So you want to get some of the key facts, the key elements, date of loss. I guess it depends on the practice area, but for us specifically, as a personal injury firm, we know there are 3 or 4 certain facts that if they meet those criteria, will automatically sign up the case and then transfer the case to an attorney or a case manager for investigation. So I think that the barrier of entry should be very low and set in a way where you are meeting your 3 or 4 required criteria, and then you're able to retain the client at that point to make it easy. You can always send the case back.
This is Mark.
I would agree 100% with Reza.
Yeah, we have a lot of experience with this, just split testing different responses on the chat conversations. The biggest thing that we've learned is to make the start of that conversation open-ended. So I want to ask a lot of questions, again, not nailing down the specifics of their case to start the conversation. My whole goal is to get them talking and get them kind of warmed up and comfortable having that conversation. If I drill them with some hard questions to start, a lot of these people have never hired an attorney before, or they're not sure they want to hire your firm, and they could take off. So what I want to do is, I normally start off with say, hey, this is Mark. I saw you contacted our practice. How can I help you? And then we may be able to help you with that. Can you tell me a little bit more about the situation? So just getting them to share what they're going through is key for this.
All right, Mark, another question directed to you. You had, during your presentation, discussed the 4 types of consumers. Are you suggesting, or do you suggest that a website appeal to all 4 types of consumers, or it should focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. So all 4, and that's the point. So if you're not, if you don't have all 4 of those components to your website, you're basically missing out on a portion of your visitors. So like I talked about to start, we're spending all this time and energy trying to drive these people to our site, and then the majority are leaving. If I can appeal to all 4 of those different buying behaviors, I've got a better chance of converting those visitors that I do have.
All right, here's a question. There had been several panelists who had discussed the use of text messaging, and sort of one practice point or question that's been raised is, how do you maintain the records of text message conversations for the client file?
This is Chris. I'll take that. any lead management system should have text messaging included within that, and they would show up just as a simple activity on that intake. So you'd be able to see a complete transcript and almost like email, have a conversation back and forth with that individual via text, and all transcripts of that would be saved within your lead management system. If you don't have a lead management system, there are text messaging programs out there where you could do the same thing. And again, it's almost like an Outlook inbox. You can have your text messaging conversations back and forth. One of those is Twilio if you were just looking for an independent text messaging program.
All right. Here's a question for Reza. Reza, when is the best time to interject cost expectations into the intake and sign up process?
At the beginning. So for us, work on a contingency fee. So I think it's probably a little bit of an easier sell than it is if you're charging by the hour. But I think that this plays into the bigger part of client management and client expectation. So my preference is always to deal with it up front so that the client knows what they're getting into, and then you also know what you're signing on for. The last thing any of us need is an issue with a client over fees or billing, and so I think it's best to deal with that right up front at the beginning.
Okay. Here's a question I'll open up to the group. Do any of the panelists have any information on intake and lead generation for institutional clients? What's the best way to reach out to them? What's the best way to contact them?
Chris, do you have any of your customers that target more, that are more B2B?
Yeah, so certainly the majority of our practices are B2C, business to consumer, but I think it's the basic principles hold true when you're dealing with an institutional or a business client, in that you want to be able to identify what questions that you need answered up front, and know if this is a case that would be something that your firm would be able to handle. I think that the engagement on the relationship side is just as important, if not more important, than it is on a business to consumer side. Because on B2B, it's a long-term engagement. Hopefully that's a client for life. So the relationship building, the engagement, the interest in what they have going on, not only on that specific case, but their business as a whole, I think is critically important. So I think that at the end of the day, intake is kind of, sales on a personal injury or consumer side. They tend to be more independent, quick transactions. And on the B2B side, they tend to be a longer-term relationship. But I think that you need to kind of approach it in the same basic fundamentals, and that you really want to engage that individual and develop the relationship.
Okay, another question related to text messages, and I'll open this one up to the group as well. What kind of follow-up text message would you send to a potential client after an initial phone call as a way to assist in either referring that person to the right attorney or to try and close that lead?
This is Mark. I think this is a bigger question, because I think where some firms struggle is they don't have a next step on that initial phone call. So I think the goal should always be, after that initial phone call, there should always be an understood next step that's going to happen in this process. If the visitor's not comfortable going that direction, you need to address that right away. So I think what I've seen firms use that next text message in, if they've already had the first communication, is just kind of follow up on what the next step is going to be and how they're going to follow through with that. So I think with this, I think you should always have this, this streamlined process. It keeps it objective, and that way you're not just emotionally saying like, hey, this guy seemed kind of interested, I might follow up with him now. Instead, I'm being objective about it, and I'm following my next process that always has a next step until they're a client.
All right, I think we've got time for one more question. So this one's kind of another general one. How do you panelists suggest incorporating the sports staff into the intake process? So what is it that they can do, or what type of personality should they have to make the best first impression for your law firm?
Chris, I think you addressed that a little bit in your presentation. So he's somebody who's empathetic, but somebody who's also, energetic. I think it also really depends on the practice area. Obviously, some you need to be much more empathetic than others. Chris or Reza, what personality traits do you look for in your intake specialists?
Hi, this is Reza. I think the main thing is getting someone who genuinely cares, who's genuine. We can all tell when somebody is disinterested, even over the phone. So I think if you can find an individual who truly cares about the people that are calling in, truly cares about the practice, and they can convey that care and genuine interest, I think that would be a winner for me.
Yeah, I would second that as well, and not to use a sports analogy here, but also the best ability is availability. If you have somebody that has extra time to be able to follow up on leads and place phone calls and different activities like that, I would certainly thread them into the intake process for sure. Even if they're not available maybe for that initial call, but for some follow-ups, just make sure that the work is getting done.
Yep, I agree.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for questions. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Please be sure to check out all the additional resources that you see here on your screen. And take care, and everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.